What do you think the intentions of this dog are? Is he likely to bite you? Is he bluffing? Or is he just playing? How can you best interact with this dog in a safe, efficient, and humane way? Every day, hundreds of people are bitten by dogs, and every day, hundreds of dogs are mistreated, in part because people do not understand what dogs are communicating or trying to tell them. The science of animal behavior can help you to understand the motivations of dogs and to predict their behavior. This videotape will introduce you to the communication system of dogs and show you how you can use this knowledge to understand and be better at predicting the behavior of dogs in a variety of situations that you may be faced with. Dogs communicate through vocalizations, with their body, through direct contact, and with scents or smells. Communication often involves more than one signal. In addition to barking, this dog is also communicating through body postures such as tail motion. Multiple signals reduce the possibility of misunderstandings. Barking has many different meanings, but because of this dog's body posture, it's clear what the dog is doing. These communication signals provide information about the dog's emotional states or motivation. When you know the dog's motivation, you are better able to predict what he is likely to do next. As you can see, when you observe a dog, there are many things you must pay attention to. It means you must train yourself to be aware of such things as ear and tail positions, where the dog is looking, how the dog holds himself, if he's showing his teeth, and if so, how, and what kinds of vocalizations he is making. Keep in mind that there is no one feature that will always give you reliable predictions about a dog's behavior. This is because different dogs don't always use these features in the same way, or some features aren't always present. Not all dogs have tails, for example. Also, some features may have different meanings in different situations, or when combined with other features. For example, a growl isn't always a threat by a dog. Sometimes dogs growl when playing. You will need to look at the context or situation and the other features of the dog to help you figure out the intentions of the dog. You must also watch for small changes in the dog's behavior in response to what is happening around him. Not all signals are obvious. In this sequence, look at the way the dog's ears have shifted from forward to backward. Unless you were paying attention, you might not have noticed this change. Being a good observer means devoting your entire attention to the dog and what is going on in his environment, watching, listening, and even smelling everything that is going on. Some behaviors can only be correctly interpreted by understanding the environmental context in which they occur. For example, these two dogs are showing redirected aggression. Because they cannot get to the dog outside the fence, they turn and attack one another. If you weren't paying attention to the presence of the third dog, this attack might seem unprovoked. Being a good observer also means being aware of the context in which the behavior occurs. Some behaviors can only be correctly interpreted by understanding the environmental context in which they occur. For example, sometimes dogs yawn when they are tired or bored, but sometimes they yawn when they are distressed in situations that cause them conflict. Yawning, lip-licking, and grooming are conflict behaviors that are termed displacement behaviors, because it seems to be displaced out of any meaningful context. Here you see a dog that is showing displacement yawning because he is trapped in a fearful situation. So he does a displacement yawn in response to his stress. To summarize, your observations should include paying attention to all parts of the dog's body, watching for sudden or subtle changes in the dog's behavior, being aware of what's going on in the surrounding environment, noticing the context in which the behavior occurs. Because there is so much to watch for, you should plan on spending more than a few seconds observing the dog in a particular situation. Sometimes a dog's mood may be hard to read, or it may change quickly, or it will take a while to scan the environment. If you're too hasty in your observations, you may misinterpret what is going on and risk injury to yourself, to others, or to the dog. Finally, developing good observation skills takes time and practice. Reviewing this tape on a regular basis can help you develop these skills and keep your skills sharp. Also, take advantage of every opportunity you have to watch dogs in all kinds of situations. You can start by watching your own dogs at home. The more time you spend, the better you will become. Before proceeding, we need to clarify the difference between observations of behavior and interpretation of behavior. When you observe, you describe what you see. In this example, you see a person bending over a dog and reaching out to pet him. The dog is cowering slightly, looking away from the person. His ears are back and his tail is tucked. The interpretation of these behaviors is that the person is being friendly and the dog is being submissive or fearful. Interpretations are not always accurate. Because the communication systems of people and dogs are different, dogs may not accurately interpret human signals and vice versa, causing miscommunications between the species. Another way to say this is that dogs and people don't speak the same language. For example, in this scene, the person is just trying to be friendly with this dog, but is unintentionally giving the dog threatening signals that create a fearful reaction. Direct eye contact, facing the dog, leaning over him and reaching toward him are all threatening gestures from the dog's point of view, not friendly ones, as the person intended. Communication is a two-way street, and while you're trying to interpret the intentions of the dog, he is trying to interpret your intentions as well. But the dog will interpret your behavior only from a doggy point of view, just as if you were another dog, regardless of your human intentions. Without first obtaining accurate observations of behavior, interpretations are even more likely to be wrong. More examples will be provided later. The first feature concerning body postures that we will look at are the dog's ears. One type of ear is pricked ears, which stand up from the dog's head, as with this German Shepherd. Sometimes one or both ears will fall partially forward. The carriage and movement of pricked ears are easier to see than floppy ears, which we'll view in a moment. Look at the different carriages of pricked ears. In a neutral position, they are standing up, but appear relaxed. In the up and forward position, they are pulled more toward the center of the dog's head, sometimes making the ears appear closer together, causing the skin on top of the head to wrinkle, or the openings of the ears to face more toward the front of the dog. In the back position, the ears are pulled back and down, sometimes almost flat against the head. They may also be somewhat flattened out to the side. We'll talk about interpreting the meaning of these different positions later. Dogs with floppy ears are harder to interpret because the ear position is harder to see and less noticeable. In the neutral position, the ears hang loosely down on the side of the head. In a more alert position, the ears are pulled forward, sometimes causing the dog's skin on top of the head to wrinkle. The alert position may be in response to something that has caught the dog's attention, such as a squirrel, a cat, another dog, or a person, including you. Floppy-eared dogs can also pull their ears back when they are frightened, for example. This position may be easy to miss unless you're looking for it, because when you look at the dog head-on, the ears aren't easily noticeable. The ears may be held anywhere in between these three positions. Cropped ears are more difficult to read because the cropping removes much of the movement capabilities of the ears. Not only do the ears not move much, but cropping gives the dog a meaner appearance because the ears are always standing up. They appear more threatening to other dogs as well as people. A Doberman with uncropped ears appears much more docile than one with cropped ears. In summary, ear position can be neutral, forward, or back in both prick and floppy-eared dogs. Cropped ears are more difficult to interpret and don't move much. The next feature we'll focus on is the eyes and the dog's gaze. While you'll want to pay close attention to the specific posture or body part we're discussing, don't forget to notice other body postures we've discussed earlier, such as ear carriage. When observing the dog's eyes and gaze, first observe where the dog is looking. Is he engaging you in a direct stare, not often looking away? Direct and prolonged eye contact is usually a threat. Not only can a dog threaten you with a direct stare, but if you stare at a dog, he will likely think you are threatening him and will respond accordingly. Instead of staring, a dog can purposely avoid eye contact. He can turn his head and look off to the side or at the ground when someone looks at him. If you stop looking at the dog, then he may turn his head and watch you. This avoidance of eye contact can be a sign of fear or submission. Does the dog appear to be uninterested in you and scans his environment instead? As he scans, do the eyes seem relaxed and moving in a casual way around the environment, with occasional blinking of the eyelids? This may be a dog that is very distracted and has found many interesting things around him to look at. If, however, the eyes seem to be darting rapidly around the environment in a constant scanning motion, this may be a sign of fear or anxiety. Scanning the environment can also be a way of avoiding eye contact with you. Some people have described this as the dog saying, "If I don't see you, you aren't there." Don't forget to observe the rest of these body postures to obtain a more accurate interpretation. Next, if you're close enough, see if you can tell if the pupils are dilated. The pupils are the black centers of the eyes. When they are dilated, they make the dog's eyes look like large, round, black circles. Dilated eyes are usually associated with fear, but may just indicate high arousal. If the dog is not fearful or aroused, the pupils will tend to be constricted to small pinpoints. If the dog is really frightened or defensive, his eyes may widen as well, so that there is a lot of white showing around the outside of the eye. This has been referred to as a whale eye. Alternatively, the dog can appear as if he's scrunched his eyes partially shut, as though he's really concentrating or having trouble seeing. This scrunched look may be more characteristic of a threatening, direct stare. Owners will sometimes describe their dogs as getting a certain look in their eyes before they bite or initiate a fight with another dog. Elements of this look will vary from dog to dog, but usually involve either dilated pupils, extra wide open eyes, and/or unwavering gaze, whether it is at the target or away from it. The dog's gaze seems to be fixated rather than moving his eyes around, observing his environment. The characteristics of a dog's eyes which you want to pay attention to are the focus of his gaze, a direct stare, avoidance of eye contact, or scanning the environment casually or anxiously. The pupils, are they constricted or dilated? How open the eyes are they wide open so the whites are visible, or somewhat narrowed or scrunched or relaxed? Another head feature to observe is the mouth. There's not much you can conclude solely from a closed mouth, aside from perhaps, as a general rule, the dog is probably at a lower arousal level than some of the open mouth positions. Don't forget, however, that you need to look at all the dog's body postures before arriving at this conclusion. There are a number of open mouth postures to look for. The most obvious, of course, is if the dog is baring or showing his teeth. One way dogs can display their teeth is by wrinkling their nose and retracting their lips vertically to reveal the teeth at the front of the mouth, primarily the canines. The dog's mouth can be mostly closed, aside from this frontal vertical retraction of the lips. This is an offensive threat, which we'll talk more about. Another display occurs when the dog opens his mouth more, retracts his lips horizontally, and displays more of his teeth, including those in the side of his mouth. This is a defensive threat. Variations, which are in between these almost opposite types of displays, commonly occur and reflect the dog's ambivalence or mixed motivations. If a dog is baring his teeth in any of these postures, he is threatening you. However, a submissive grin involves showing the teeth, but it is not a threatening posture. A submissive grin is hard to describe with words, as it somewhat resembles the offensive frontal tooth display seen earlier. In the offensive threat, however, the dog's eyes are wide open, and in the submissive grin they are somewhat closed. Sometimes dogs will lick their lips as part of a submissive grin. You'll also need to evaluate the rest of the dog's body postures to see the difference. An offensively threatening dog will have an overall very different appearance than a dog displaying a submissive grin. Other open-mouthed postures can give you some idea about the dog's emotional state. For example, dogs pant not only when they're hot, but also when they're anxious or stressed. Panting is another displacement behavior, as is yawning, which we showed earlier. Another facial expression that involves the mouth is what we call a happy face. The mouth is open, the tongue may be partially out, the face is relaxed, the skin around the eyes is relaxed, and the dog just looks happy and content. If you see this face, you should be happy too, because you'll probably get along fine with this dog. In summary, you should look for panting, yawning, baring of teeth, either with a closed mouth and vertical lip retraction showing primarily the front teeth, or a more open mouth with horizontal lip retraction showing more of the teeth. Submissive grin, lip licking, the happy face. Tail carriage in dogs varies widely. This is partially dependent on where the dog's tail is set on his back. Dogs with their tails set lower on the back will have a lower tail carriage, even when aroused, than dogs with a higher tail set. Some dogs have long tails, some have short ones. Some have virtually no tails, either naturally like a corgi, or because they're docked, such as this German Shorthair and Doberman. In addition to changing the position of their tails, dogs with long coats can also make their tails appear larger by making the hair on them stand up, in the same way they sometimes do on the back or the shoulder area. Look at the difference in the appearance of this dog's tail when he is relaxed, as compared to when he is alert and aroused. Any posture that serves to make the dog look larger is usually motivated by an offensive threat or aggressive response. You can more accurately interpret what a dog's tail carriage is telling you if you know what a neutral tail position is for that particular dog. Some dogs just normally carry their tails relatively high or curled over their backs, or relatively low, or somewhere in between. You may not have the opportunity to see the dog's tail when he is in a relaxed state, so you'll have to carefully observe how his tail position changes over the course of your interaction with him. In general, the higher the tail carriage, the more alert or offensively motivated the dog is. Note that the other body postures of these dogs also indicate the same state. Their ears are up and they're standing very erect. Similarly, the lower the tail carriage, from hanging down vertically from the body to tucking it between his legs, even so far that the tip of the tail touches the abdomen, the more fearful or defensive the dog. In addition to piloerection and carriage, dogs also use their tails to communicate their intentions or emotional state by moving them. There is a widespread myth that a wagging tail means a friendly dog. Many people have been bitten by dogs who were wagging their tails. This is where careful observation of the dog and changes in his posture are important. A tail that is furiously wagging from side to side usually indicates a friendly intent, assuming that the rest of the dog's postures indicate the same thing. However, a slow, very methodical back and forth waving is not a friendly posture, but a threatening one. A tail that is carried high and held almost perfectly motionless can either indicate a dog who is very alert and focused, such as a dog watching a squirrel,